Slip of the Tongue. Psychology by Marc Wilson. According to the wags who have colonized the entertainment information database, IMDb, the 1 p.m. daily COVID update takes place in the imaginary island nation of New Zealand, a utopian society where science, facts, strong leadership, and a genuine care for its people and environment take precedence over money and big business. There you can find reviews of the occasional and occasionally more frequent episodes of said dystopian satire. Under the tagline "Spread Your Legs, New Zealand," for instance, when a reporter asks Chris Hipkins about exercising safely in Alert Level 4, things get spicy. Yes, at the moment that the COVID-19 response minister described the challenges of spreading your legs while trying to social distance. If that's not a quote of the year, it's going to have to be a raucous rest of 2021. RNZ staff, the Herald and even Neighbourly describe it as a Freudian slip, a mistake in action or thought that, according to psychoanalytic theory, arises when something slips through from our unconscious and interferes with an intended action. For classic Freudians, unconscious content frequently involves taboo topics such as sex and death. Freud didn't call these Freudian slips, but rather referred to such slips of the tongue or action as faulty acts, actions, and recollections. He opens the psychopathology of everyday life with a faulty act of his own. Difficulty recalling the name Signorelli, the artist responsible for frescoes in the Umbrian cathedral. Instead, Botticelli and Botticelli came most readily to mind, even though he recalls knowing those names to be incorrect. Freud goes on to explain the mechanism for this faulty recollection, which starts in a train carriage heading to Bosnia and a conversation about the Italian cathedral that included the words Bosnia, Herzegovina, and her that come to replace the three artists' names because Freud recollects he was preoccupied with thoughts of death and sexuality. He theorized that he had repressed the correct name because it coincided with his reflection on the death of a client with an incurable sexual disturbance. I kid you not. The idea that we repress things we don't want to think about because they are so uncomfortable is a controversial one. On one side, we have experts who argue in favor of this Freudian notion. On the other, we have experts who argue that unrecovered memories are false memories created through a combination of foibles in how memories are made and how police and therapists interview people. It has played a part in high-profile criminal cases, both locally and internationally, involving traumatic abuse that victims themselves don't recall, unless often helped to do so by police or therapists. It's not just victims who are urged to experience repressed memory, but also the perpetrators. In Nebraska, for example, 3 members of the Beatrice Six were convinced by officers and police psychologists that they were responsible for murdering an elderly woman in 1985. That they said they didn't do it didn't mean they didn't do it, but rather that they had repressed the memory of doing it. All 6 were ultimately convicted, some of whom having come to believe they were guilty. In that case, the convictions were ultimately overturned because they weren't actually guilty, and property taxes in Gage County were increased to make it possible for the county to pay the reparations that were ordered. So, what can we divine about Hipkins' unconscious then? On the one hand, we could take a cognitive psychological approach to the slip. On one perspective is that we're constantly and dynamically monitoring the words we're about to speak, and a slip of the tongue is that relatively rare occurrence where the quality assurance process has failed to catch an error before it occurs. It's also the case that stretching and spreading one's legs both make colloquial sense and share some phonemic similarity. Or, on the other hand, we can conclude Hipkins was thinking about something other than physical distancing.